if you are in a situation where you are taking a leap of faith into the unknown, I want you to remember that this is okay. It is okay to be afraid. It is okay to feel guilty. It is okay to feel sad. It is even okay to feel regret. Hey, Bliss'ner, welcome to episode number 72 of Bliss'n Up. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever been in a situation where your circumstances aren't bad enough that you have to leave, but also not good enough that you want to stay? Sometimes the hardest choices in life aren't when you're deciding between wrong or right or bad and good, but rather when you are deciding between good and potentially great. The key word being potentially. Oftentimes, when we are going from something good to something that we believe will be great, what comes with it is a lot of uncertainty and unknown. It is usually a leap of faith into the future, and that requires courage and comes with a lot of fear and can oftentimes stir up a lot of grief. That's what I want to talk to you about today, and I'm going to share with you a story about my son and an experience that he had in deciding between something good and something that's potentially great, and everything that came along with it, in hopes that you can see your own story in his circumstances, and it will enlighten you and invite you to take your own leaps, even when there's grief, even when there is fear. Now, to give you some context, a while back, I recorded an episode. It was episode number 17, and it was called Getting Off the Bus. And that episode was about my son, Orly, who was transitioning from one school to the next. He had realized at some point that the school that he was at was no longer the right fit for him. And he knew it long before we did. And he hadn't said anything to us because he had created kind of like a self-imposed prison for himself, and he thought he was obligated to follow this path because he had started on that path. And at that time, it was an opportunity for my husband and I to share with him our philosophy that if you are on a bus headed in the wrong direction, you get off that bus as quickly as possible. We are both believers that you are the author of your own story. And if you're on the wrong bus, get off the bus. You do not have to sacrifice your life to one path just because at some point you chose that path. You can always make arrangements, and you can make pivots, and you can turn the page and start a new chapter. So when we recorded that episode, I felt really good about that transition for my son. There was a lot of clarity as to that decision. I was very comfortable with that decision. But this year, our circumstances were a little bit different. And it actually happened with both my younger children. With Ryan started a new school this year and very quickly realized he was on the wrong bus. But in his case, which was a little bit different than Orly's, our fear was that Ryan was getting off the bus just because it was a bumpy ride, not because he was headed in the wrong direction. And we wanted him to understand the difference. We don't want our children to believe that when things are hard or uncomfortable, that we run away from them and we just get off the bus just because it's a bumpy ride. So with Ryan, we spent the entire year paying attention, noticing, naming what he was feeling, nurturing his situation and his intentions to decide if, in fact, he was on the wrong bus. And at the end of the year, after much contemplation, reflection, deep conversations, we finally realized it was time for Ryan to get off the bus. and go back to his old school where he came from. And we allowed him to do that. And then there was Justin. And Justin was a completely different ballgame because unlike Orly and Ryan, who themselves had decided that they were on the wrong bus, Justin was moseying along, going on for the ride, not asking to get off the bus. He was happy at his school. He liked his friends. He liked his teachers. He liked the environment. He wasn't complaining. And yet, he also wasn't thriving. For a long time, I had seen this child who was a curious learner, a person who's very intellectual, who enjoyed learning. I saw him disconnecting from school, disconnecting as a student, and caring less and less and less about his academics, about his performance, about his grades, about any of it. And as time went by, I also saw him losing that love and that curiosity that comes with learning. So even though he wasn't complaining, I just felt that there was something more for Justin, that there was something better for Justin. Now, I will tell you that I personally have been challenging the traditional school model for a long time. I've been seeing things that I don't like about the school model. I don't necessarily think that it is creating children who are critical thinkers, who have a deep love of learning, who are experiential learners. There's a lot of studies that suggest that kids up until the age of 5 years old, when they come into kindergarten, are geniuses and creative, and that somehow stepping into the school system shuts that down and really changes them and dims their light. So I've had my issues with traditional school for a long time. I've even fantasized about homeschooling my children and looked into it quite a few times. And what I will say is the reason I never pulled the trigger is because even though I thought there was something better than the traditional school model, I did not think that I was necessarily better for my kids than the traditional school model. I never felt like I would be the best teacher or like I was willing to leave my work and dedicate myself fully to homeschooling. It was just never a good fit. So I abandoned that idea and I left them in their traditional school, but I always looked for something and I always hoped that a better model would present itself. And I never found one. Believe me, I looked, but I never found one. Until recently, a couple of years ago, I got a call from my friend Katie, and Katie and I had talked a lot about our beliefs about the school system. We both have children. We exchanged ideas, and Katie had been introduced to this new school model. And she called me one day and said, Caro, you've got to check out this new school. It is impressive. They are disrupting the system. They are creating customized lesson plans for these kids. These kids are learning through AI. They are just changing the way for education, and they're in Miami, and I think you need to check it out. So hopeful and excited, I did go to check it out, and I even took my 3 boys to visit the school. And at the time, it was just starting out, and I immediately became obsessed with the model, but it was so tiny. It didn't even have kids in the grades that my kids were in. So my kids did not like the idea of leaving their entire social environment to be able to go to this school and start this program as much as I liked it. So they opted out and they stayed in their respective schools. Well, fast forward to last year, I continued to pay attention and to stay in touch with the school. I kept going to their events and following their education. And I noticed that they were gaining some popularity and they were growing. And I was very hopeful about the program. And I noticed that my son was really struggling academically, not because he doesn't understand the material, not because he doesn't learn well, not because he's not a good student, but rather because he was demotivated, he was disinterested, he was disconnected from academics. And I think he had entered into a belief that school was just not for him, that he was going to become an entrepreneur, or that he was just going to be one of those out of the box people that couldn't follow the structured school system and was just going to get by until he became a businessman later in life. And as I saw him throughout the year losing more and more interest, all I could think about was this different model, the model of this new school, Alpha, that had just opened in Miami. So I invited Justin to revisit that school. I asked him to please just shadow the school for a day and explore the possibility of going there. And Justin didn't seem too convinced about this, but he appeased me and he went and he shadowed the school for the day. And the craziest thing happened that day. I believe in synchronicities, and I always get signs when I know that we're on an aligned path. It's the craziest thing. So on this day, he goes in and he spends the whole day there, and I am waiting all day on pins and needles, wondering if he's going to like the program. And when I pick him up, he tells me that he really liked the program. He thought it was a very cool school. So he didn't tell me too much, but we get in the car, and I had this audiobook playing in the car. Now, I had read this audiobook years prior. The name of the book is Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. If you've listened to this podcast, I have referenced this book multiple times in the past podcast episodes. But I listened to this book a few years ago, and I had this feeling that I should re-listen to the book back then when this was going on. And what's interesting is that I have never before listened to an audiobook twice. I mean, I read a lot and I listen to a lot of books and podcasts and things like that. Who has time to listen to one thing two times? But for whatever the reason, I had felt compelled to listen to this audiobook a second time. So on that day, we get in the car, and when I turn on the car, I see that the Outwitting the Devil is on the dashboard. And since Justin wasn't talking to me too much, I said, well, listen, by the way, this book is a super cool book. I think you'd really enjoy it. And the voice of the devil is spectacular. I would love for you to listen to his voice. And I play the book where it was in that section. And it just so happened to be a section that was talking about the school system. And the devil says at that moment, I fear the day that an individual will disrupt the school system and allow children to be independent learners and lead themselves and replace teachers with guides. Now, Alpha doesn't have teachers, they have guides. And when my son and I heard that, we looked at each other and he was like, Mom, do you think Mackenzie Price read this book before she started Alpha? And I was like, I have no idea. But what I do think is that this is a moment of synchronicity and a sign that this school might just be for you, Justin. So he kind of sat with that and we went back home. And for the next several weeks, he contemplated whether he should attend this school starting in 9th grade at the end of the year or start the high school of the school that he was at, which he loved. It was not at all an easy decision for him to make because, like I said, It's easy to get off the bus if you know you're going in the wrong direction, but it's not easy when you like your bus, when you're not really sure if you're going in the wrong direction. It's not so bad that you have to leave, and it's not so great that you have to stay. That's such a tough one. So the time came where he had to make his decision. And I really didn't think that he was going to choose Alpha. I thought he was going to follow the more comfortable path and stay with his friends and just grit through the next 4 years of high school until he got to college, because he was going to prioritize the social dynamics over his education. That's what I thought was going to happen. But somehow he chose Alpha. Now, when I think back as to why he made that decision, I think two things played a role. One was, I think he trusted my intuition. It was very strong, and we had some real in-depth conversations about it. And I think he trusted my gut in knowing that there was a lot of possibilities for him in that school. And also, I made it very clear to him that he could maintain his social relationships outside of school. He didn't have to be all or nothing. He didn't have to give up everything. So I think he trusted me. That was one. And then the other one, which is, I think, the most important for him and also for you to realize, is that this decision did not have to be permanent. He already knew that we were the kind of parents that would allow him to get off the bus if he was on the wrong bus. I mean, he had seen it happen with his little brother and his older brother. So he knew that we were open to this being an experimental year. And we said to him, hey, listen, if you love this, great. But if you don't and you want to go back, we believe that they will welcome you with open arms. We are open to you going back to your old school. You can always change direction. Nothing in life is permanent. You are the author of your own story. You can always create a new chapter. I think the nature of the whole thing allowed him, or gave him permission to feel like he wasn't stuck to this decision, that he could take a leap of faith, he could take a risk. Because the worst thing that could happen is he lost a year and he'd go back the following year. So I think that gave him some comfort. And he made the choice, and that was it. And that was great. I was very happy about his choice, and I was very hopeful. And he didn't really talk much about it after that point. He kind of went back to his regular school, and then he started the summer, and we put it aside for a few months. And then the first week of school came, and his older brother was leaving to Warrior Week, which is a 1-week retreat that his school offers. And Justin was supposed to be on that retreat. And I noticed that he was very quiet. He was very reserved, and he didn't want to appear like he was sad, but I could tell that he was really sad. So one day, my husband and I sat with him in his bed, and I said, Justin, I want you to understand something. When you leave something that is good for something that is potentially great, that comes with a certain level of grief, because you're not leaving something bad. You are leaving something that you loved. And that is really hard. So right now, in this moment, you get to feel sad. You get to have FOMO. You get to experience cold feet. You get to be unsure and uncertain about your decision. You get to feel a little bit of regret of having left what was familiar and comfortable to step into the unknown. You get to feel all your feelings, all the negative ones, all the sad ones. Embrace those feelings. They are part of the human experience. And you get to feel them and go forth with courage anyway. That is what courage is really about. Courage is about going through the path less traveled. Courage is about having the strength to leave something that is good. Courage is about willing to be uncomfortable in pursuit of greatness. It was a difficult week for all of us. I, as his parent, felt nervous. What if I pushed him in the wrong direction? What if we're all going to regret this? His father and I both felt guilty that he wasn't at Warrior Week with his brother having the time of his life. So we all sat in that discomfort in hopes that we had made the right decision. And if you are in a situation where you are taking a leap of faith into the unknown, I want you to remember that this is okay. It is okay to be afraid. It is okay to feel guilty. It is okay to feel sad. It is even okay to feel regret.
Hey there, I'm taking a quick pause from the episode just to let you know that I have created something for you this month that I think is super fun. It's a 31 Simple Ways to Strengthen September worksheet. This is going to be a fun way to strengthen your mindset, your wellness, and your relationships. So make sure that you go to carolinedeposada.com/September. carolinedeposada.com/September. And you can also find it on my show notes. Back to the episode.
Even before it happened, because we are in the midst of stepping into the unknown. But I believe that when you have the courage to take those kinds of leaps, there is always a reward on the other side. Even if you've made the wrong decision, the growth you will experience as a result of that decision is priceless. In our case, we're still in the beginning. We have the whole year left. But as of right now, it seems to have been the best decision we have made. Justin is loving school. I see him thriving in a way that I had not seen him in a long time. I see him working harder than I have seen him work in a really long time. I see him motivated and enthusiastic and feeling joyful about going to school. I've seen him maintain his old friendships and forge new relationships in his new environment. It seems to be an incredible place for his growth. I am blown away by the school. I believe that this is the future of education and that sooner rather than later, there will be a waiting list out the door to come into this alpha program because it is tapping into these kids' potential. It is unlocking their genius. It is encouraging them to build resilience. It is teaching them not to be afraid to fail. It's teaching them to focus on what matters most, to move forward with purpose and intention and goals. It's like my son said, I'm a member of the National Speakers Association and they have a youth program. And my son said to me, Mom, it's like you managed to find the school version of the NSA youth program, which is a huge compliment, by the way. I think it's like the best training of all time. So it has been a wonderful thing. But even if it hadn't, I still would have stood by the decision. I think one of the most limiting beliefs that we have in our lives is that we can't get it wrong. We can't make a mistake. That if we make a decision and it doesn't work out, we shouldn't have done it. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that we learn from our mistakes. We learn from getting it wrong. This is how we grow. I think it's important to understand why it is that you are moving from something that is good to something that is great. It is because fundamentally you understand that you are on a path that is not ideal for you. And that requires discernment. It requires processing, and it requires a deep understanding of what success looks like for you, what you value most, what your priorities are. It requires that you are strong in your core, that you have deep clarity. So there is no one size fits all, and no one can tell you when is a good time to take a leap or when you should be happy where you are. No one can decide for you what is good enough or what greatness is. Only you can make that decision. And if you are struggling to make a decision like that, I highly encourage you work with a coach or with a professional that can help you discern so that you are not constantly jumping from one thing to the other in pursuit of a feeling or an emotion or to a distraction or to hide from the work you have to do in your life. But if you do know that you are in a situation where you are comfortable enough, it's good enough, but you know there's more for you, and you have a desire to step into that version of yourself that could be great, I hope this episode gives you permission to do that. I believe you will always be rewarded. And if you dare to make that move, I invite you to look for the synchronicities along the way that let you know you're on path. I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity that I've had to learn these lessons through my kids' journey. I believe that the three of them are teachers of mine, and that I see in their lives and in their paths lessons that not only apply for them and for me, but also for you. So I hope the story has served you. And I hope you, this month of September, are strengthening your courage to step into the highest version of yourself. That's all I've got for you today. I will see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful for this time to connect. If you're loving this podcast, I'd love if you could support me by subscribing, rating, and or leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so much. And if you know of someone who could really use a voice like mine in their head, please share this with them and let them know how much you care about their bliss. Now, if you are feeling called to dig deeper and really work on elevating your mindset, wellness, and your relationships to create a healthier, happier, and more meaningful life, then I invite you to schedule a 60-minute complimentary consultation with me. Let's have a meaningful conversation and see if working together is in our future. You can find the link to the calendar of consults right there in my show notes, but you can also connect with me on my website, carolinedeposada.com, or just send me a DM on Instagram at Caroline de Posada. Like my friend always says, the project is big and you're a part of it. So thanks for being here.